a slightly different story about them. I have sort of vaguely known for a while that Prince Philip, for example, was quite interested in UFOs. Well, now there's a documentary about the royals and UFOs. It is an interesting one. The King of UFOs is what it's about. And let's have a look and listen to the trailer now.
Join us now on this riveting journey as we explore the British royal family's unique fascination with the unknown.
The royal family has been interested in UFOs for decades. This was always a matter of extreme sensitivity.
Documents going way back to the 50s.
The Queen sent scientific advisors to crop circles. They know more about it. They want to find out more.
Of course there's life somewhere else, and the royal family believe it.
Do you think the technology US pilots are seeing now in the skies could be linked to what Charles was flying?
This will leak, and it will cause quite a scandal.
There were dome-like projections around each of the pilots. Charles and his engineering crew were familiar with the craft.
So many sighting reports.
What are they here for? What's Charles going to respond to?
Their interest is based on factual knowledge that they've been able to get access to that we don't.
It will alarm people. My God, these things are dangerous. It's a bit like a Pandora's box. If we took the lid off and looked inside, we'd never be the same again.
King of UFOs is the documentary. Its director is Mark Christopher Lee. Thanks for joining us today. Where does this all stem from? Why have the royals been interested in UFOs over the years?
Yeah, I think they've always had this fascination with the unknown, wanting to know what's going on, really. And I first became aware of it, really, was last year when I lucky enough to meet a retired CID officer, John Hanson. You see him at the end of the trailer. And he's got this fabulous UFO archive up in Stratford-upon-Avon. And he's also got lots of letters that he's received from the Queen and Prince Philip about his UFO books, showing a great interest in them, which I was unaware of. And then the more digging that I did, the more information that I found. And I just thought it fascinating, really, that, serious people, like the Queen, Prince Philip, Lord Mountbatten, took, UFO seriously, whereas, we kind of jokingly look at them and, think aliens, little green men. But no, the royals had this serious side about UFOs, which is like, whoa.
Were you interested in it before, or was this just something that came up as you were making the documentary? I mean, what's your sort of personal interest, and do you believe there is life out there?
Yes, definitely life out there. I mean, most mainstream scientists would believe that now. I do have a science degree, so I'm quite rational, quite skeptical. I have been looking at UFOs for about 20, 30 years. I have an open mind, is what I would say. There's definitely going to be life elsewhere. Whether it's visiting us is a different matter, but it's definitely unexplained phenomena in the skies. Whether it's some secret, highly advanced technology that we are not aware of or something else, that's to be seen. But the royals took it very seriously, and I think, I wanted to make this film to put that message across, and maybe we should be taking UFOs a bit more seriously.
You've talked about the historical aspects of this. What about the current royal family? Who's the biggest sort of UFO person now? Is it King Charles?
I think so, yeah. I've been informed by a source that he's had his own UFO sighting, which is interesting. But, Charles has got this open mind, this alternative mind. He's always been into homeopathy and talking to plants, so he's had that side of him.
Yeah, the nonsense of homeopathy, yeah.
Yeah, so, he's had that passed down to him from his father. So, but yeah, and the Queen must have passed some of this down. She was massively into crop circles.
The Queen was into crop circles. Okay, yeah, so this is in the documentary.
It is in the documentary. Okay. I spoke to an author called Colin Andrews, and he was down in Wiltshire in the 1990s, where a crop circle had just been formed. He was with a Japanese film crew. This film crew got word that the Queen was going to come down and have a look at this crop circle being formed. This Rolls Royce turned up out of the car. It wasn't the Queen, unfortunately, but it was her chief scientific advisor. And bearing in mind, they had to keep this secret and, under the radar a little bit, because the MOD And the British government said, oh, there's nothing to UFOs, but the royals were kind of doing their own thing.
Mark, I just want to tell you that my brother has just messaged me to say, UFO guy interesting. I don't think he's ever, in 4 years of presenting these programmes, I don't think my brother has ever sent me a message saying he found something particularly interesting that's on the show. So thank you for that, Tom. Tell us a bit more about your film. Where can people see it?
Yeah, it's out now. It's on Amazon Prime. It's free to watch for Prime members. You know, have a watch, let me know what you think, and if anyone's got any sightings they want to report, you know, contact me. I'm easy to find on social media. I've got an open mind, so
okay.
You know.
Now, one of the stories you told me was the latest problems with Archwell, Harry and Meghan's charity foundation, and a certain $6 million worth of donations that we might say are questionable. Let's talk about that in a little while. I think what we should talk about first, though, Kinsey, you know, I'm not being sensationalist here. Let's be honest. The talk around Harry and Meghan's marriage is getting stronger by the day. Certain royal watchers, royal commentators like yourselves, you haven't actually said this, but I've seen that more and more of them are saying that the strain on Harry and Meghan's relationship is becoming worse by the day. And this is to do with the fact that professionally things aren't working out for them. We know that. Harry's just been on, think about this, just been on a 15-day, 3-country tour. 15 days away from his wife and family, during which he made 10 solo appearances. So we discussed this before. We believe, well, it's pretty much a fact, that Harry's image makers have said, you need to do more on your own. You're better off in the public gaze when you're solo. You're better off when you're not with Meghan, because Meghan's got her publicity problems. So the point is, increasingly separate professional lives, and some royal commentators are now stating that this marriage is experiencing difficulties.
Look, I can't imagine being married to somebody that the world is willing to forgive when they're not willing to forgive me. And there are going to be some people out there that say, I have no desire to ever forgive Prince Harry. But there is a huge majority of people that grew up loving this little boy because of who his mother was, loving him because of who his father was, loving him because he was the quirky third wheel, the free spirit. And people, a lot of people really feel like Meghan is the bad egg, and Meghan is influencing a lot of Prince Harry's decisions. And once you get Harry away from Meghan, he's a different person. If we could, if you could get him away from her permanently, he would go back to normal and everybody could fall in love with him again. There is a sector out there of royal watchers that believe that to be true. Meghan is an incredibly insecure person, and I don't hear people say this enough. When she talked to Variety magazine, this was shortly after the Queen died, and she was on the cover of Variety. She talked about being perpetually paranoid about being kicked off of Suits. Despite starring in 108 episodes, she was riddled with anxiety over the idea that they could recast her throughout the series Suits. Additionally, I look at her relationship with the Princess of Wales, Catherine, and see somebody that is incredibly insecure in comparison to this woman that we had a decade to fall in love with, and that we do love. We love Catherine. I think that the animosity there is Meghan being ridiculously envious of Catherine. And it is going to cause problems at home. Yeah. If Prince Harry goes off to New York and goes off to South Africa and goes off everywhere, and the headlines are glowing, and you are sitting at home with 2 kids on your hip being torn apart by the Hollywood Reporter. It is going to cause problems at home. She is going to be envious of Prince Harry's popularity. She's going to be envious of his ability to bounce back, because she doesn't have that. And I believe she is a very insecure person.
I think it's a really good point. And I think that Harry, when he's on his own, is a different person to when he's with Meghan. And that shone through on his recent kind of mini tour. I mean, I don't forgive him for the terrible things he's done to the royal family. He got himself, he allowed himself to be carried along to do unconscionable things, you know, calling the royal family racists, calling his dad a skinflint, calling all of Britain slave drivers. You know, you're not forgiven for that, mate. You shouldn't have done it. You know, you're really not forgiven for it. That said, there's no doubt that on a one-to-one basis, when he's on his own, he's an affable bozo. He's a nice enough guy. And this recent mini tour he made, he went to New York, then London, then to South Africa. You know, he was clearly enjoying himself and people enjoyed his company. I think he's different when he's on his own to when he's with his wife.
Yeah, he is a bird that's been uncaged. He is that free spirit that we used to see when he was the third wheel with Prince William and Catherine. You know, just the silly personality, the outgoing personality. When he is with Meghan, he is far more guarded, far more protected, far more paranoid, unhappy. And, you know, I do think that Meghan sits at home probably scrolling through the internet, seeing all of these, you know, glowing reactions to Prince Harry on the road. And she is, meanwhile, dodging all of the negative press she's receiving thanks to the Hollywood Reporter's bullying allegations. She does the last-minute ditch effort to throw a bunch of her friends in Us Weekly magazine to sing her praises, and that backfires because it was such a horrific rebuttal to the Hollywood Reporter report. Yeah, let me just get a bunch of people on my payroll to talk about how nice I am, because they're not worried about their next check bouncing. So I just thought, I think she probably is really resentful of Prince Harry's ability to bounce back and his ability to be charming and to charm the right people, to get the right headlines.
Yeah, you see, and also she wants to make a lot of money. She wants to use her celebrity, use their position to make a fortune. You know, she doesn't mind working for it. To be fair, so I don't have any objections to that. Good luck to her. Now, she's tried to bring Harry into this. Harry's a member of the royal family. Harry doesn't understand working for money. It's just not in his world. You know, when you're in the royal family, you go and open a library, you cut a ribbon, you make a little speech, you say, you make small talk with everyone and say, have you come far? How nice to see you. That's what they do. So he'll make some money if it happens to happen, but that's not him. She, meanwhile, is a hustler. She's trying to make money. And I think that's another reason that there's this kind of divide building up between them. So if you have professional difficulties, if you're having difficulty making money, and everybody's experienced that, happiness is difficult to achieve. And that's what I think might be happening behind the gilded gates of their Montecito mansion. A certain unhappiness, personally, that's been caused by their professional difficulties.
Absolutely. Also, when I saw Meghan on that red carpet it was a green carpet, I think. But when I saw Meghan on the carpet in that red dress, I didn't think, oh, how nice she's recycling. I thought, could she not afford a new dress? I mean, that's such a, you know, I hate that I thought that. But, you know, you are making your big re-entrance to, you know, the public view after weeks of where is Meghan whispers, and you opt to wear this dress that you've already worn before. We've seen it, you know? And it completely contradicts some of her prior statements about not wanting to be seen as a bimbo. You know, the idea that she looks like a deal or no deal girl in that red dress. You know, it was remarkable how much she looked like a deal or no deal girl. So I do wonder if they're having financial issues. I know that they are having professional issues. You know, they were called, I don't have to repeat it, but they were called blanking grifters by Spotify. We're almost a year out. Meghan Markle has yet to produce a Limonada podcast. Where is Meet Me at the Lake? Where's American Riviera Orchard? These are not people that tend to be able to execute. We are patiently waiting to watch all of these different projects actually come to fruition. That is going to create friction at home, absolutely. But also, Meghan, I think Meghan, there's an anxiety with her because she knows the clock is ticking. You know, everybody's famous for 15 minutes. How much longer are people going to give these two the benefit of the doubt? When are they going to just categorize them as all talk, no action, and hypocrites, you know, and people that are consistently contradictory?
And you remember, Kinsey, that in the old days when they were first sort of going out with each other and when they were over in Britain, he would get together with his mates, with his buddies, you know, and they'd have a few beers and make inappropriate jokes, and she'd go around sort of chastising them and admonishing them for their inappropriate humour and things like that, you know. And that's not what Harry is. Harry is a guy with a beer who is liable to make an inappropriate joke. That's what he naturally is. That's why we liked him. But old Queen Meghan, she doesn't like that kind of thing. So I think that might be at the root of some of the problems as well. A certain different approach to life. She takes herself very, very seriously. Harry, at his best moments, does not take himself that seriously. At his worst moments, he takes himself way too seriously. But let's move on to this other problem. There's been some reports over there in America, Kinsey, that Archewell, their charity foundation, has pocketed as much as $6 million, about £4 million, from an organisation, a charity organisation called, a charity company called Fidelity Charitable. Now, it turns out that this company, this organisation, has been accused of handing out $25 million to 30 outfits that are identified as hate groups, including allegedly an anti-gay organisation and a white nationalist group. So I'm not sure what's happening with this $6 million, but Harry and Meghan, they better give it back, hadn't they?
I mean, that's my first instinct was return to sender, address unknown, to quote Elvis Presley. I would not want this money. This money feels dirty. I wouldn't want this association. Those types of groups completely contradict Harry and Meghan's message of acceptance, diversity, and it is, you know, you are who you associate with. I think it looks totally irresponsible to be anywhere near this story. I wouldn't want anything to do with this. I think they should reconsider this association as quickly as possible. And who is managing this stuff? This is why the palace is so crucial when it comes to the way that they navigate and do their due diligence over who members of the royal family associate with. You know, they have people that sit in a room and Google and make private phone calls to ensure that whoever Prince William's about to shake hands with hasn't been in any trouble at all in their lives. So I think that it's one of those weaknesses that we consistently see with the Sussexes, that somebody is not monitoring their associations.
Yeah, no, I would never suggest that Harry and Meghan in any way would personally sort of support anti-gay groups or groups that campaign for some kind of white nationalism. You're right, it's clumsy and careless that they let this stuff get through the net. And I think they're going to have to hand back that $6 million. But you have to be careful in these situations. If you're a charity accepting donations, sizable donations like $6 million, find out all about who's giving you that money. Otherwise, it might give you problems. And I think they're going through those problems now. Last question, Kinsey, about King Charles. He's just arrived, or he's about to arrive in Australia. For a tour, begins later this week. He loves Australia. But all 6 state premiers, the governors of the 6 states, major states in Australia, they're New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, Western Australia, South Australia and Tasmania, are all too busy to come to his reception to welcome him to Australia. So they're sending him a message: we don't want to know about the royals, we want independence. Now, I don't think that is necessarily reflected among the population of Australia. I suspect if they had a vote tomorrow, they'd still vote to keep the royals. But that notwithstanding, not very nice for the king to turn up and be snubbed by all 6 governors of the major states of Australia. Extraordinary.
A king that is suffering from cancer and is risking his health by getting on this plane and making this trip. I mean, I think that it looks appalling. It looks absolutely appalling for the leadership to turn their backs on him in this way. And he has been so gracious in saying, you know, it's up to you whether you want to keep me or not. It's up to you if whether you want to continue to have the royal family involved in Australia. He said it's the citizens' choice, it should be no other way, just like the Queen before him did. So I think he's been incredibly gracious throughout this process. You're right. He loves Australia. He's going to enjoy his time here. And I hope that those politicians, I hope that they look really nasty, and I hope people are critical of them for this decision.
Yeah, it seems like a nasty way to treat an ageing man with cancer. But they're obviously making a political point. I mean, they're all saying things like, oh, I'm campaigning that day, or, oh, I've got an important meeting that day. In other words, it's the political equivalent of saying, oh, I've got to wash my hair that day. They're snubbing him. It's kind of unkind because, as you say, he's not going over there to say, hey, I'm the king and don't you forget it. Far from it. He's just visiting, and as you say, Kizzy, he said, look, if you guys don't want me anymore, if you don't want the British monarchy, totally understand, it's 2024, have a vote and I'm on my way. But this is, they're treating him in a very rude way that I don't think it doesn't become them. But there you have it.
Monarchists, Australia seems to be a hotbed of criticism. Basically, every Australian state leader has given King Charles the cold shoulder, and monarchists have accused the state premiers of insulting King Charles, as they won't be at a reception when he comes to the country. The King's visit, which we know starts later this week, will include a reception in Canberra, but the 6 state premiers, that of New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, Western Australia, Southern Australia and Tasmania, have said they're unable to attend. I just wanted to put this to you on the day that we've heard the Caribbean island of Barbados, that we both know very well, demanding reparations. Do you think that Australia is becoming ever nearer to a republic and wants to move away from its involvement with our monarchy?
I mean, I think they probably, it's the other side of the world, and you could understand there will be, and let's look at the demographic of Australia now. It's a very different country now, with its closer links to Asia and all that. Its dynamic is different. And the King's not naive. And I'm sure, I don't know whether in previous state visits and that when the Queen may have been there and the Prince Charles, whether there was a 3-line whip for these state premiers to turn up. So I couldn't say whether that is the case and whether it's a different dynamic. But clearly there has been a big debate within Australia about, do we still need a head of state the other side of the world? And you can understand Australians having that discussion in a modern era.
And I also want to jump in and say, I think you made a really good point there, that perhaps the reason for it being now at the forefront is because I think there was such huge love and respect for the Queen, 70+ years on the throne, that maybe any aspirations that certain governments or countries had, and I'm with you. Listen, you know, it's thousands and thousands of miles away. What is the relevance? I completely get that. Maybe there's a feeling amongst these places that you know, however upsetting it will be for monarchies, that now's the time to talk about it with the Queen no longer with us, Rupert.
Yeah, and the King is not naive, and he's always said this, and it was the same when it came to Barbados, as you say, a country that we've had some lovely times in, and it's and they've moved on. Of course, there is a different undercurrent going on with some of the Caribbean countries. With Australia, I think he's taking the view, I love it. It's been part of his life from a very long time, and he's loved going to Australia. And given that he's recovering from cancer, It's not going to be the full trip that he had hoped. He'll go on to Samoa as well. But I think there will be, obviously, rumblings in the Australian camp. But the current Australian Prime Minister has said that an independence referendum is not on the agenda. But it is something that will be discussed. The King is quite aware of what's going on. But it's a positive sign that he's going there. I'm sure he'll hear both sides of the argument. But it's not really his decision one way or another. He will just have to be accepting of the decision. And I'm sure, like Barbados, they will remain if they when and may make the decision. And I think we probably have to accept the decision will come when, not necessarily in the short term, but I'm sure Australia will. But the three countries, New Zealand, Australia and Canada, at the moment aren't showing obvious indication that they want to change the status quo. But Australia is now maturing. It's a very different country than even when the Queen ascended to the throne, when the Queen died, and now the King's there. It is a very changed country. But obviously, whether the premiers of the various states are making a point just to say, look, we are our own bosses and we don't bow to the King, I'm not sure. I'm not privy enough to Australian politics. But, you know, you feel that in Canberra, even the one nearest to Canberra might have found a way in his diary to get there.
You know, it's really interesting because you and I would be fervent royalists, but I'm very much like you on this. I can see that the timing and the way the world has changed will probably mean that those questions need to be talked about. Just also, saw Kate out and about last week. What's the latest with her? Any news on? She continues to get better, I'm guessing, but a steady progress and steadily back to work.
It's like just like the King's going out with his doctors. It's every day as it's taken, and see how she is. I think last week was a terrific step forward. It meant she obviously felt well enough to go to Southport as a team, back on the road again. Look, the thing is, 10 months now since the cancer diagnosis. It clearly has been far more problematic than the King because he's been out and about and feels well enough to go to Australia. You and I know going to Australia is, you know, you get off the plane when you land in Sydney, you feel like you've hit a wall and you don't know where you are, who you are and what your name is.
That's a hard journey, that, mate, isn't it? God, we've done that.
It is. I know that he won't be at the back of the plane. He will be in a comfortable position on that particular flight to Australia. So I'm not worried about the comfort factor, but it's still when your body's then going to be thrown out of sync. But to see the Princess of Wales back out and about, doing a more conventional state visit, as it were, going to the people of Southport, I thought that was a very positive sign. But don't suddenly see it as a means that she's going to be out every day of the week. It will be managed as it has been throughout. The next time I think we probably will see her, but you never know. We're slightly blindsided by last week at Southport. Will be at a Remembrance Day service in London.
Now, apparently the Duchess of Sussex has told girls she was one of the most bullied people in the world on social media. You want to do that in the past tense, do you, Meghan? I'm pretty sure people still don't like you, according to my particular newsfeed.
True.
But what's interesting about this, I don't care what she said to the girls on her latest sort of, you know, look at me, let's make it all about me, not about you. What is interesting is that Harry's been, in the last sort of how many weeks, about 3 different countries. He's been to Lesotho, he's been to, I don't know, somewhere else, he's been all over the place, doing his own sort of, I'm still a working royal, but I'm not. Yeah. And she's been all over the place doing I've never been a royal, but I actually think I'm queen of the world. But they've not been doing anything together. Now, interestingly, right, his 40th birthday, he went out for a hike with his lads' mates. She weren't there. Also, you look actually you're going to fall over and die with tedium.
A little bit. I don't care. I just generally don't care. These two have taken up so much of my time, so much of the country's time, and airwaves and column inches for nothing but their own narcissism.
But what I'm saying, is, I think there's something funny going on with them.
No, I don't.
Not sharing
I don't
a
think
40th
there is.
birthday together, starting to do separate things.
No,
when he was supposed to have a joint appearance, apparently she was off sick. I think they're on the rocks.
No, I don't. I generally don't believe. I actually think what this is that Prince Harry's trying to rehabilitate his image because he wants to come back home. And
Yeah, because they're on the rocks.
No, but not because they're on the rocks, but because he wants to come back home because he realises where the grass was greener.
They're the most oddly suited, oddly unsuited couple. In the immediate term, you can see how they get along because she ghoulishly pretended to be his mum, and he in Oedipal manner thought that was wonderful and then married her. But she's super controlling, right? We know
I see this again.
And
he's been a willing participant in this from day one. I don't think he had to be convinced, whipped or anything.
Oh, no,
I think he's been going along with this.
Oh, no, but what I'm
I think
saying
he's been
is,
waiting for someone like Meghan.
I think he's just a bit of a loser, isn't he?
Oh, God,
No, but I think he has someone to sort of, he's a bit like, oh, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing, can't be bothered, want to go to a party, want to go take ayahuasca in the rainforest, yeah. And she's like, I'm going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to make some money, we're going to be the biggest people on planet Earth, you're going to be bigger than your brother, we're going to move to Hollywood, we're going to be so loved. And something like that is really good for a few years, until all of a sudden, those personalities clash, and I swear, I think that they're in trouble. And I think that'd be good news for us.
But then, even if they are, I'm sorry, I don't really root for people's marriages to end.
No, I don't actually.
No, and I hope. Let's not forget there are kids involved in this.
There are,
and they are a family, and they are human beings, and I think people forget that when it comes to Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. And
I'm not sure human beings is an. I'm joking.
I know, but yeah, this is the thing. Like, don't get me wrong, I rail against them for their hypocrisy. I rail against them for the lack of self-awareness and all the rest of the things that make them absolutely terrible human beings. But at the end of the day, they are a married couple, and I don't want to see that break up. I don't.
Oh,
I know. I'm somewhat of an old
Christian than I am.
I'm an old romantic, but just don't tell anybody.
Sweetheart,
I know.
I like that about you.
I know. I've got layers.
Let's talk about old romantic. I'm an old romantic in the sort of more conventional. Actually, I'm an old romantic as well, if I'm honest with you, in the sort of Red Roses way. But no, when it comes to sort of the romance of history,
yes.
And I'm a big royalist actually, despite sort of saying I don't often like talking about them. I just like them to quietly get on with what they do in a sort of dignified British manner. But when it comes to, say, our monarchy being the head of state in Australia, I kind of want that to continue, if I'm honest, because it doesn't really mean anything in actuality. But apparently the King has said he won't stop Australia from axing the British monarchy. He tells Republican campaigners he has a deep love for the country, but wouldn't block moves for it to become a republic. He's about to go on tour of Oz. Now, of course, this is what he's supposed to do. If he said, I'm going to wade in and stop this from happening, even though they're supposed to be unpolitical, that would only sort of, stoke,
stoke the flames. It is definitely the right call. It's the right tone. It's the right thing to do. But then we have to look at that. Was it the kind of the first voices? No, native voices referendum that they've just had in Australia, which was supposed to be the ultra woke thing, and it failed miserably because it would give it would actually give you kind of two. A real two-tier society. It was a terrible idea, but all the wokists wanted it. And
Australia isn't really a woke place.
No,
I don't think.
no,
they don't strike me as very woke.
It always got me that they did gay marriage through referendum. As we did ours to a parliamentary vote.
Don't get me started on that topic. In a non-homophobic way, I just don't want state interrupting religion. But, it's interesting. I think that the best way to scare off any sort of overseas Republican is to say, OK, I know it's archaic. It seems a bit fuddy-duddy and odd. And whether you want to carry that through into the, next century of having a monarch who's on the other side of the world who doesn't live there and doesn't really do anything, who's just sort of a ceremonial person who pops up once in a while, I can see why that might seem funny, right? I get that. But who do you want to be your president then? What do you want your constitution to look like then, huh? And what executive powers do you want that president to have?
Because
once the wonderful thing about having a monarchy, and if you look, actually, this is a prime example, okay? You look in the Middle East at all the countries that have gone like ding-dong crazy. They're the ones who got rid of their monarchies. Now, say what you like about autocratic regimes, but the ones with the sheikhs and the ones with the emirs and the ones with the sultans and stuff are the ones that are normal. When you get rid of monarchy, monarchies, frankly, you know, the best monarchy is the one that doesn't really do anything. They're there symbolically, but sort of is the plug on top of power. Get rid of monarchies and you get ayatollahs and
monarchies wallpaper over the cracks.
I saw the cutest viral video this week, and I haven't seen this story anywhere yet. It was the most precious exchange in this fan video. A little bit of backstory. The Wales family were heartbroken when their beloved dog Lupo died in 2020. Thankfully, the family quickly welcomed a new addition, care of Catherine's brother, James Middleton. In January of 2021, James, who breeds spaniels, gifted the family Orla. The name Orla is Gaelic, that's of Gaelic origin, and translates to golden princess. Orla was from a litter of 6 spaniels bred by Catherine's little brother. And this little puppy, deeply adored by the Wales crew. Earlier this month, while Prince William visited Birtley Community Pool, he made an exciting admission telling a fan who had her own spaniel there, hopefully we'll have puppies soon, adding, it takes a little while. Orla puppies would be a welcomed distraction after a tough year for the Wales children. You know, the beautiful black pup was featured in Princess Charlotte's 7th birthday photos taken by her mother, and famously, most recently, seen throughout that intimate video shot by Will Warr in Norfolk to announce the end of Catherine's preventative chemotherapy treatment. Orla is related to James' beloved pet Ella, late Ella. And you can get Meet Ella, the Dog Who Saved My Life by James Middleton at a bookstore near you. It's available for purchase now. That is so exciting to look forward to. I'm a dog person. I have 4. They're all sleeping around me right now. But for little kids, what an exciting adventure and kind of the coolest thing ever to see.
Well, I think we all know the therapeutic effect of having pets. I have referred to Percy, sometimes his therapy is not the kind of effect you have when he's decided that there's some fresh food to be found around where I live in rural Warwickshire. But there is something very positive about animals being in a household, because they do. And James Middleton actually very revealingly has talked about the positive impact that a dog has had on him as he's battled with depression and his mental issues, and the effect an animal has had on him. And we can see that whether it be guide dogs. You know that dogs are around to act as man's best friend and woman's best friend. They are there for all. You've got 4 of the little things, as you say, dominating your life, no doubt, Kinsey. I have a cat at the moment, but I did have a much beloved a border terrier called Fudge, who sadly passed away at age 16. And, you know, we miss him still. And all people do. If you look after dogs, and you can just go through anywhere, everyone posts about my friend who's been part of my life. And I think it is important that a dog does help, you know, and it's a welcome distraction and great fun for children. You've got to bring them up properly and respectfully and treat them with care, and they will give you all the love back. So hopefully the Orla and the family will be successful. Whether, you know, then obviously some people will have the privilege, presumably, of owning some very nice spaniels. But we all know that dogs have a huge, and pets as a whole, have a hugely therapeutic effect on the well-being of us as humans. And the Waleses are no exception when it comes to this.
Well, I wonder if Queen Elizabeth felt that way, but never really vocalized it, because mental health wasn't necessarily something you spoke about in her generation. You're actually seeing it, people being much more open to discussing mental health today, you know, and when Prince William and Catherine and Harry decided to launch Heads Together, that was kind of a groundbreaking conversation that they were having. But we know Queen Elizabeth, that's my girl, animal hoarder, just like myself.
Yeah, well, her and her corgis and animals, horses, were her therapy. Yeah. In many ways. Look, the corgis and animals, but you know that she was often in a happy place when she was around her racehorses or breeding horses in the Sandringham estate, wherever. Horses, right from her childhood, were an integral part of her life. And basically, you know, she said she would have been happier to be around horses all her life. I think we actually have to look at it and say what a positive impact animals have on human beings when you have them at any level. Look, I've just come from the Horse of the Year show, and I can see in the UK, in Birmingham, what horses mean to people. I mean, I see people permanently in tears last week of people who have been winning various events at the Horse of the Year show because of what these horses and ponies mean to them. And, you know, at all levels, all ages. And I think we have to understand that the royal family, it humanizes them. But the Queen was never going to sort of reveal all in a public display of revelation about her sort of how she gets calm and sort of finds a way of letting off steam. We know horses were the Waleses, and indeed Harry, when they were this very powerful threesome going out there advocating on mental health, they were really good. And James Middleton has done his little bit with the fact, but highlighting the significance of pets to his road to recovery. And if he's by contributing as he has done, he will have helped his sister on her road to recovery.
I wasn't going to bring this up, but listening to you talk about how great it was to see them, I'm fired up now. I did stumble upon one outlet, and I won't even give them the benefit of the mention, but they were talking about how at the Southport engagement, William and Catherine looked strained, you know, and could this be signs of something going on in the relationship? And to that, I would say, I can't say it because my grandma will be mad at me. But to that, I would give them I'd give them my favorite finger. And I would also say, if you watch the video,
I'm old enough to be your grandfather here, so please be careful here.
But if you watch the videos, actually what I see is two people that are moving in sync with each other. The way he touches her lower back when they're navigating, the way when he's introduced to someone, he brings her forward to ensure that she's included in the conversation. There are so many visuals to show that this couple is united and that he is worried about her, crazy about her, loves her. And I mean, have some compassion. This woman had cancer. Was close enough to it. Like, it angers me beyond all comprehension to see that conversation happening.
Calm down, Kinsey.
I know.
Right. What I would say, look, I think the stresses and strain is actually having her back out on the road, because we're now, what are we? October. It was January. It was revealed all. So, you know, their Christmas was presumably turned on its head, or the Christmas time, because that's when it all unraveled. So for the last 10 months, you know, they've had to navigate their way through quite a complicated scenario. But to see her away from the sort of traditional comfort zones of where she's been at, King's Birthday Parade, Wimbledon, you know, back out meeting the general public, I think, you know, that's probably, it was a big moment, because they know the eyes of the world are going to be on them. Because the moment they came out together in a non sort of what we might say formal capacity, like we're expecting to see her next month at the Remembrance Day service and on that Sunday in November. You know, that's where you actually have to look back and just say, no, we all know people with cancer. The stresses and strains that it puts on all family members is enormous. And in their case, it's going to be magnified because of the level of focus. So I think, you know, when people do write that kind and say that kind of stuff, you think that might be an element of clickbait.
Oh, yeah.
And you've got to slightly look and be up and beyond and say, he's probably thinking, right, you know, how is she? Because he's the only one, apart from her doctors and probably one or two key members of the family, you know, who know exactly what the situation is. And we shouldn't be speculating We should just be grateful that she felt well enough in these circumstances to get back out on the road again.
I also don't have any of these.
Hi, and welcome to Brightly Storytime. I'm Megan, the Duchess of Sussex, and today I'm going to read to you my book called The Bench.
This is your bench, where life will begin. For you and our son, our baby, our kin.
I hope you enjoyed The Bench. I loved being able to share it with you, and now I hope you're able to go and find your own special bench, or a chair, or a little quiet nook. Just a place that means something to you that you can share with someone you love. Have a great day and come back to Brightly Storytime soon. Bye.
Now, the interesting thing about that video is that is the whole book. She's ruined sales there. There's nothing else in that book other than that.
It was 100. The whole book was 160 words or something, wasn't it?
It's a work of.
Well, I might try writing a book if I knew that.
Well, this is my point, right? Celebrity children's books.
Yep.
The proliferation of them. Now, there are some people out there who are of note before who write good books and they've got a career out of it. But there's just endless ones coming out now, all the time. And if you were someone like Michael Morpurgo or Roald Dahl, if you were still alive, you'd be there going, what?
Well, a lot of real writers, I say real writers, a lot of professional writers are really pissed off about it. That every other two-bit children's or celebrity starts writing children's books. I blame Fergie, who I think she wrote 13 books about Budgie the helicopter.
Budgie the helicopter.
I've never read one of you.
Yeah, 13, unlucky for some.
Available in all good charity shops around the country.
Yeah, which is where they swiftly end up.
Are you absolutely sure about this? Just that poem was all that was in that book?
Honestly.
No, honestly, there's no more in it. And it's like, what was the I mean, The Bench.
Who decided?
You know, it's a story about
a bench.
No, it's a story about a father's relationship with his son, as told from the mother's perspective. In other words, rewriting history, which she seems to be quite good at. I think it's just endless now, all the time. It's like, oh, I'm bringing on a little kids book. Channing Tatum, right, has written something called Sparkerella. Now, Channing Tatum plays a stripper most of the time. Why is he writing a kids book about a girl?
It's agents, though, isn't it? Agents are now saying to their two-bit actor clients, you know, who've just been in some crap TV drama, now it's time for you to write a children's book.
Time for a kids book.
Because it could be the jackpot, you know?
Here we are, Kevin. And Kevin's book all about...
What would you...
if I was to write a children's book?
Yeah.
Tales from the Dark Side. How about that?
But I actually think the more serious point is the way Mike Tindall is extremely clever in giving nuggets. So we all know who he's married to. He's married to Zara Tindall, daughter of the Princess Royal. He, a former Rugby World Cup winner, boy about town. You know, he's a lovely lad. I've spent quite a lot of time with him, and he's great, engaging company. Very few people, you never hear a bad word about him, but his way he manages his royal connections is incredibly clever. Because everybody knows who he is. And we've even seen his podcast where he had Kate and William talking about how competitive they are. And the Princess Royal was in on the act as well. And look, they're all a very good sporting family. You know, the Princess Royal was a top eventer, a European champion. Zara Tindall is a world champion in eventing. And Mike Tindall is a World Cup winner. And it is very clever the way and it goes back to the Princess Royal was very astute from way back when. And it's a lesson for other members of the royal family, and I'm not just including Harry and Meghan in this, about making it easy for their children, because Princess Royal married, in her case, another brilliant three-day eventer, Captain Mark Phillips. So it was bound to be that Zara was always going to ride, and she became world champion. But it was a commoner, no title, no nothing, and she did not want her children to have any title at all. so that she was protecting them, seeing down the line. Yet we all know their connections. But what I think is fascinating is way they've navigated their commercial ability and worked very hard at it. And the one thing that Mike does is very clever. You know, he gives nuggets, but it's always a good nugget. And just to tell that George is an Aston Villa fan, it's not news, but it gets people. It confirms what we all know and we can see. But he says how normal they are as a family. And the Tindalls have commercialized their life. They work very hard at it, but you don't feel that it's a burden. And I think I know where you're going to go.
Yeah. No, just listening to the way you're describing it, what you're describing is the argument that Meghan tried to make during the Oprah Winfrey interview when she said there are other royals that have been given this opportunity. But Meghan and Harry have been vindictive in the content they've created. They were plotting behind the scenes with QB, I think that was the name of it, before they even announced that they were leaving the British royal family to create bite-sized content for them. I think what inevitably came to fruition was the Netflix deal. But Harry and Meghan just didn't have the same energy. They didn't have the same moral compass that I believe Zara and Mike do. They didn't have the same, I don't know, guidelines or they just they never respected protocol to begin with. So how could the family trust that they were going to respect protocol if they allowed them to half in, half out and to go do all of these commercial ventures?
I think the important thing is the Tindalls have never said they're working members of the royal family and never were. So there's a big differentiation there because they always were ploughing their own furrow. Yes, they've got they're not short of a bob or two, but they commercialized their life and they're committed parents. For the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, a very different dynamic. They were working members. Harry was a working member of the royal family. So there's a very different dynamic about how you're going to deal with that separation. And that was the problem that the Sussexes couldn't come to terms with. They didn't know how to become the equivalent of the Tindalls. And that's what they could have done. But at the same time, they've gone over to America, yet they've knocked on an HRH moniker on their children in a state in a country that doesn't have titles, which I feel for the poor children there, because why?
Right.
Whereas that's why the Princess Royal and her lesson is something that the Sussex could learn from. And it's the same in a way for Prince Andrew, because he did exactly the same. Now, no, okay, he was the man, so he was in, but his daughters have been given HRH. They're non-working members of the royal family and are leading their normal life. And, I know people in them say they're lovely and they get on with their lives as much as they can. And I have to say it must be at times pretty trying for the pair of them. But the Sussexes did still see that they were the golden couple. And this was their big problem. They thought they were the golden couple. When they come onto the scene, they were what everyone was interested in. They soon realized that that wasn't the case. And if they've taken a leaf out of the Tindalls book and gone, right, they're the role model, we can commercialize ourselves. But what we don't need to do is to go a-bleating.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the point that turned people against them, because it became a bleat fest from the moment they did that Oprah Winfrey interview.
Well, I think what's important that you just said is that they should have aspired to be the Tindalls, but they were aspiring to be the Beckhams. They should have had much more realistic expectations. Meghan wants to be an entrepreneur. Meghan wants to be a hashtag girl boss. But if she would have just humbly pursued her passions versus trying to take over the world, I think she would have had much more success.
Well, I think she's probably jealous of the Beckhams because they've commercialized their life to an nth degree. I mean, David Beckham is still a walking cash register. I mean, it's amazing. and you go, what he does, he just has to turn up. I just hope he can keep. Now I managed to avoid walking past any more tattoo parlors. You know, I don't think there's probably any more room to put a tattoo on his body. But
not only a walking cash register, but a walking billboard as well.
He's a walking billboard. So I mean, and Posh has got a fashion design.
And a beauty line, and she has a fashion design, a beauty line. She has reality shows. Their docuseries on Netflix was nominated. I think they won an Emmy. Harry and Meghan weren't even nominated.
That was an example of the most brilliant piece of puffery.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
And neither the Beckhams or the Tindalls, pursue the victimhood narrative. They're very much... but both of them very much seem like they're happy, content, and excited with their lives, feeling very blessed. You don't hear them not just criticize members of their family, but you see them vocalize real positivity and uplifting, content. Mike is funny. He's fun. Just talking about that nugget. Here's a cute story about Prince George. And everything that comes out of their mouth tends to be positive and uplifting. I'd also argue that the Beckhams and the Tindalls have a work ethic that the Sussexes just cannot compete with. After King Charles's cancer diagnosis earlier this year, many doubted a tour of Australia was even possible. How exciting to see their majesties in the land down under. The king and his aides understand that his majesty's health will be under a microscope like never before during a trip packed full of engagements. Palace aides believe they need a solid incident-free execution to generate confidence in the king's health and leadership. I'm optimistic that the king and queen will handle any potential pressure with grace. With whispers already beginning, King Charles has stressed that he won't stand in the way if Australia wants to become a republic. Described as a narrow victory, Australians voted to keep the late Queen Elizabeth II as their head of state in 1999. During the Queen's 13th visit to the country the following year, she spoke of how the decision was up to the citizens, saying, "I have always made it clear that the future of the monarchy in Australia is an issue for you, the Australian people, and you alone to decide by democratic and constitutional means. It should not be otherwise." A Buckingham Palace spokesperson recently reiterated the statement, saying, like his mother before him, it has always been the case that His Majesty the King feels that it is a matter for the Australian people. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, who previously said Australia should have an Australian as head of state, recently indicated that a second referendum was not a priority. What do you hope to see while the King's in Australia? Let me know in the comments below. We had a surprise Princess of Wales sighting last week that tugged at our heartstrings. Royal sources say Catherine decided to join Prince William to meet with Southport victims to show her support, empathy, and compassion to the community. The Prince and Princess of Wales spoke to emergency responders and families affected by the Southport stabbings. This was going to be an emotional experience for both Prince William and Catherine, who have tiny Taylor Swift fans at home. You can't help but imagine yourself in those parents' shoes. Catherine deciding to surprise first responders and affected family members did make for an uplifting afternoon of storytelling, memories, and community building. So much of what the Prince and Princess of Wales do is listen. They listen and they process and they form new ideas based on the feedback they get from some of the brave individuals they meet out in the real world. You and I connected because you're not the typical royal watcher. You very much are aware of virtue signalers when it comes to celebrities and politics, and I think that that's how Meghan Markle got on your radar. Am I wrong? Am I right?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that's a sort of crossover. There's this huge crossover of maybe sort of the people who are already interested in the royals, and then people like me, and there's a lot of us who associate Meghan with just the pinnacle of virtue signaling, and because my other channel, Heretics, as you point out, I mean, that covers the culture wars. It's just something quite cultish that I found annoyed me, because everybody thinks they're doing good all the time. Everybody thinks that they are a good, virtuous person, perhaps not a psychopath, but the vast majority of us do. So seeing Meghan trying to get away with something that was becoming increasingly fashionable in our society, which was just, oh, I care so much about the environment while taking private jets everywhere. I'm a feminist, but my ideal is to become a princess. Those kinds of hypocrisies, putting herself on a pedestal with the likes of Serena Williams, who's actually accomplished something just by virtue of marrying someone. All of these things put her on my radar as someone not only absurdly privileged, to borrow a word from maybe her own vocabulary, but also important. And this is important, and I often make that point that this isn't just gossip here. This is the royal family, which even today people often forget is the head of state in the United Kingdom. So that's my country. It's one of the well, I suppose one of the most important culturally in the world. It's losing some of that compared to what it once was, but culturally it still is there. And Meghan has married into this establishment. So she is really important in what she does.